We think of history as a straight line, an unavoidable chain of cause and effect driven by logical decisions. But sometimes that line is suddenly broken. Since ancient times, mystics, shamans, and oracles have looked into the dark cosmic abyss and claimed to see the shape of tomorrow. We are taught to dismiss them as clever frauds, offering a few well-placed guesses to fool the desperate. For 99% of history, you are absolutely right. But then there is the remaining 1%. The moments when predictions were made with such meticulous, unsettling detail that they defy logic. These are not mere coincidences. They are historical paradoxes that remind us of how little we truly understand about the fabric of time. Today we look at 5 chilling prophecies that cross the boundary from strange visions to terrifying reality. Predictions that actually came true. Our first story takes us back almost 2,500 years to the ancient, sun-drenched valleys of the Near East. Meet the richest man on earth, King Croesus of Lydia. His vast wealth was legendary, his political and military power practically unmatched. He was the man who first standardized gold coinage. But all the gold in the world could not buy him true peace of mind. The looming threat of the rapidly expanding Persian Empire, sitting just across the Halley River, terrified the great Lydian king every single night. Should he strike first and attack the Persians? Croesus knew he needed the ultimate divine confirmation before launching a massive military campaign. He sent his most trusted messengers to the legendary Oracle of Delphi, laden with massive offerings of silver and pure gold. The Pythia, the high priestess of the ancient god Apollo, received his royal ambassadors in the dark, mystical depths of her underground temple. Breathing in the strange volcanic mists, she delivered an answer famous for its ambiguity. Yet Croesus heard only what he desperately wanted to hear. If you attack the Persians, a mighty empire will fall. Croesus rejoiced immediately, absolutely certain that the Persian Empire was finally doomed. He swiftly mobilized his massive forces. Confident in his divine backing, Croesus marched his glittering army straight toward the eastern border of his territory. They crossed the fateful Halley River, officially invading Persian lands. He expected an easy victory over King Cyrus the Great, the legendary Persian ruler. The two ancient superpowers clashed in a monumental, earth-shaking battle. Chariots charged and shields shattered in the dust, but the Persian line held strong. Instead of a glorious triumph, the brutal engagement ended in a grueling stalemate. Exhausted and depleted, Croesus ordered his bleeding army to retreat home. He assumed the war season was over. But Cyrus the Great was a brilliant tactician. He launched a massive surprise counterattack against the Lydians. The Persian forces surrounded the supposedly impregnable capital. In a shocking span of just 14 days, the magnificent walls of Sardis were completely breached. The once invincible king was dragged from his palace in heavy iron chains. His legendary wealth was plundered, and his powerful kingdom was erased entirely. As Croesus watched his golden city burn to the ground, the terrifying irony of the Pythia's prophecy finally struck him with devastating clarity. If you attack the Persians, a mighty empire will fall. The oracle was absolutely correct. A mighty empire had fallen. It was his own. He had blindly assumed the prophecy meant his enemy's destruction. History's first great prophecy teaches us a chilling lesson about human arrogance and inescapable fate. But prophecies are not just ancient myths whispered in dark caves. Sometimes they are written under the bright, modern light of a Victorian gas lamp. Fast forward to the dawn of the 20th century. Meet Samuel Clemens, universally known and beloved as the legendary American author Mark Twain. Twain's life was deeply intertwined with a celestial phenomenon. He was born in 1835 on the exact day that Halley's Comet appeared brightly in the sky. The brilliant writer knew this cosmic coincidence perfectly well. In 1909, as an old man, he made a hauntingly specific, documented prediction about his own death. "I came in with Halley's Comet," he wrote. "It is coming again next year, and I expect to go out with it." Exactly as he foresaw, on April 20th, 1910, Halley's comet returned, blazing brightly across the night sky, fully visible to the naked eye. And exactly one day later, on April 21st, Samuel Clemens suffered a sudden heart attack and passed away peacefully. He went out with the comet. Was it a profound psychological self-fulfilling prophecy or a genuine cosmic connection? The universe kept its secret, but history recorded the chilling accuracy. But perhaps the most terrifying premonition of the modern age occurred not in the stars, but on the pages of a forgotten fiction book. The year was 1898. An obscure American author named Morgan Robertson sat at his desk, writing a short novella titled Futility. The book told the story of an enormous, luxurious British ocean liner. It was deemed entirely unsinkable by its incredibly arrogant creators. Robertson named his fictional ship the Titan. In the story, the Titan hits a massive iceberg in the North Atlantic during the cold month of April. Because the fictional ship was supposedly unsinkable, it carried barely half the lifeboats needed, resulting in a devastating, catastrophic loss of life in the freezing water. The novella was published, sold poorly, and quickly faded into obscurity. Robertson moved on with his life, entirely unaware of the nightmare he had just described. 14 long years passed. The world entered a bold new century of rapid industrial progress, completely blind to the unimaginable tragedy looming on the icy horizon. In 1912, the British White Star Line proudly launched the largest, most luxurious passenger ship ever built. They called her the RMS Titanic. The similarities to Robertson's forgotten book are mathematically impossible to ignore. Both ships were around 800 feet long and possessed 3 massive propellers. Both were described as floating palaces. Both carried a severe shortage of lifeboats. And tragically, both struck an iceberg on a freezing cold April night. As the majestic Titanic sank into the freezing Atlantic, dragging thousands to their doom, fiction and reality violently merged in the most horrifying way imaginable. Morgan Robertson had effectively written a detailed documentary of a catastrophic nightmare, almost 14 years before the real ship was even conceptualized. While novels can predict technological disasters, what happens when a prophecy comes directly from the mind of the most powerful man in the world? April 1865. The brutal American Civil War was finally drawing to a close. President Abraham Lincoln was utterly exhausted, bearing the weight of a fractured nation. Despite the looming Union victory, a heavy, suffocating sense of doom hung over him. A few days before his death, Lincoln experienced a profoundly disturbing nightmare. He recounted this terrifying vision to his close friend Ward Hill Layman and his wife Mary Todd. The dream began in the dead of the night. In his sleep, Lincoln felt a deathly stillness. Then he heard the faint, mournful sound of subdued sobbing echoing through the dark halls of the White House. He wandered from his bed, following the weeping. He walked from room to empty room, finding no one, yet the agonizing sounds of distress grew louder. Finally, he arrived at the East Room. There, resting in the center, was a catafalque covered with a dark pall, heavily guarded by solemn Union soldiers. A massive crowd of mourners surrounded the corpse, weeping bitterly. Confused and terrified, Lincoln approached one of the soldiers guarding the mysterious casket. "Who is dead in the White House?" Lincoln asked. The soldier replied with a chillingly flat tone, "The president. He was killed by an assassin." At that exact moment, a loud burst of grief from the dream crowd startled Lincoln awake. He found himself sitting upright in his dark bedroom, sweating profusely. He tried to brush it off as mere exhaustion, but the terrifying vividness of the dream haunted him, lingering like a dark, inescapable shadow in his mind. He even joked about it, attempting to lighten the mood. But exactly 2 weeks after describing this horrific nightmare to his friends, history took its tragic course. On the evening of April 14th, Lincoln attended a play at Ford's Theater. As the crowd laughed, a man named John Wilkes Booth slipped into the presidential box. A single, devastating flash of light shattered the darkness. The prophecy was fulfilled instantly. The president had been struck down by an assassin's bullet. Days later, Abraham Lincoln's body was placed in the East Room of the White House, surrounded by weeping crowds, exactly mirroring his chilling premonition. Across the Atlantic, a different kind of prophecy was brewing. Not in the feverish dreams of a president, but in the calculated charts of an English astrologer. Meet William Lilly. In the 1650s, he was the most famous and influential astrologer in England, heavily consulted by generals and politicians alike. He didn't rely on sudden, ghostly visions. He used complex mathematics, planetary alignments, and ancient astronomical texts to map out the future of entire nations. In 1651, exactly 15 years before disaster struck, Lilly published a highly controversial pamphlet containing a series of cryptic, terrifying illustrations. One specific woodcut depicted an ancient city completely engulfed in massive flames, with a pair of twins tumbling headfirst into the raging inferno. In traditional astrology, the zodiac sign of Gemini, the twins, explicitly ruled over the city of London. The visual warning was absolutely unmistakable. For 15 long years, the ominous warning was entirely ignored. Then came the incredibly dry, blistering hot September of 1666. A small, seemingly insignificant spark ignited inside a humble bakery on Pudding Lane. It was a careless mistake that would change history forever. Fanned by unusually strong eastern winds, the monstrous fire quickly devoured the tightly packed, highly flammable, medieval wooden houses of the crowded city. For 4 agonizing days, the Great Fire of London raged completely out of control, painting the night sky in apocalyptic shades of fiery orange. Even the massive stone walls of the old St. Paul's Cathedral crumbled into ashes, its famous lead roof melting like wax in the blistering inferno. When the smoke finally cleared, over 13,000 houses were completely destroyed. A massive chunk of the medieval capital had simply vanished into dust. The devastated British Parliament desperately needed a scapegoat. They immediately summoned William Lilly, vividly remembering his terrifyingly accurate illustration from 15 years prior. They accused him of starting the fire just to make his own prophecy come true. Lilly calmly defended himself, insisting the stars merely warned him. He was ultimately acquitted, but his chilling illustration remains one of the most stunningly precise astrological predictions ever recorded in human history. So, how do we logically explain these terrifying anomalies? Modern science offers a very comforting answer. The human brain is a desperate pattern recognition machine. We are biologically hardwired to seek order in chaos. When a massive, traumatic disaster strikes, our minds frantically search backwards through time for a warning sign. Psychologists call this phenomenon retroactive clairvoyance. We ignore the millions of predictions that completely failed and hyper-focus on the single one that accidentally hit the mark. Consider the mathematical law of truly large numbers. Throughout human history, billions of dreams have been dreamed, and millions of fictional books have been written. Statistically speaking, if you roll the cosmic dice enough times, someone, somewhere, is mathematically guaranteed to describe a massive ship hitting an iceberg in April. Many famous prophets relied on incredibly vague, cryptic poetry. Their words act like a blurry mirror, reflecting whatever event the desperate reader wants to see. You can mold vague, ancient verses to fit a modern plague, a war, or a fire, entirely after the event has already happened. This logical framework is highly comforting to us. It keeps the terrifying universe neat, predictable, and safely within our human illusion of control. But then, you remember the chilling specifics, the exact dimensions of the Titan, the precise east room of Lincoln's funeral, the specific return of Halley's Comet. These extreme, highly detailed outliers cannot be easily dismissed by simple statistics. They tear a massive, terrifying hole in our comforting web of scientific logic. This forces us to confront a terrifying philosophical concept known to physicists as determinism, often visualized as the block universe theory of time. What if the linear flow of time is merely an illusion? What if the past, the present, and the future all exist simultaneously in reality? In this chilling theory, the future has already been written. We are simply experiencing it frame by frame, like a movie film rolling through a projector. A true prophecy, then, is not a magical guess. It is a rare glitch in human perception, a moment where someone briefly saw the end of the film. And if the script of human history is already completely finalized, the most terrifying, unanswerable question remains: who or what actually wrote it? Think about the sheer, crushing, psychological weight of these moments. Imagine being King Croesus, dropping to your knees in the burning ashes of your own kingdom, or Morgan Robertson, sitting in the dark, suddenly realizing that the universe had used you as an unwitting mouthpiece for a catastrophic historical nightmare. Or Abraham Lincoln, walking into a crowded theater, knowing deep down in your soul that your horrific dream was about to end in a flash of light. These men did not possess magical powers. They were simply tragic figures, briefly allowed to see the script, yet completely powerless to alter the timeline. To see the future is not a gift. It is a profound psychological burden. In ancient Greek mythology, this terrifying paradox was known as the Curse of Cassandra. The gods granted Cassandra the divine ability to see the future with absolute, terrifying clarity, but cursed her so that no one would ever believe her warnings. This ancient curse still exists today. Think of the modern scientists or data analysts who accurately predict economic collapses or natural disasters, completely ignored by the masses. If the block universe theory is correct, then trying to change a prophecy is impossible. In fact, attempting to escape your fate is what actually causes it. It creates a terrifying closed time loop, an Ouroboros. Croesus attacking the Persians to prevent his own fall is exactly what caused his fall in the first place. You cannot sidestep your destiny if your desperate attempt to sidestep it was already written into the script from the very beginning. So, the Oracle Owl watches silently. It does not warn us in order to save us. It warns us simply because the warning itself was supposed to happen. This brings us to a deeply chilling realization about our own lives. Right now, in this exact, seemingly ordinary moment in time, somewhere in the world, a forgotten book, a bizarre dream, or a complex algorithm has already accurately predicted the next major historical shock. The signs are already out there, hidden in plain sight, patiently waiting for the devastating moment of retroactive clarity to hit us. We simply haven't recognized them yet, because history is completely logical, but only after it happens. As we look back at the ashes of Croesus's ancient empire, the sunken wreckage of the Titan, and the tragic grief of Lincoln's premonition, we are forced to ask ourselves the ultimate question. Are we the true authors of our own destiny, or merely actors reciting lines on a cosmic stage? The ancient oracles are long gone. The Victorian astrologers have faded into dust. But the profound human desire to pull back the curtain of tomorrow remains exactly the same. Today, we build massive supercomputers and run complex predictive algorithms, desperately hoping to achieve what the Pythia did with a single breath of volcanic gas. Yet, the universe constantly reminds us of our own terrifying fragility. The timeline is vast, dark, and utterly indifferent to our technological arrogance. Perhaps the true value of these chilling historical prophecies is not in their uncanny accuracy, but in the profound humility they force upon us. They teach us to respect the absolute unknown, to accept that despite all our logic, there will always be terrifying, unexplainable shadows in the dark. So tonight, when you step outside and look up at the vast, starry night sky, remember Morgan Robertson, Abraham Lincoln, Mark Twain, and King Croesus. Remember that time is a river with currents far deeper than we can comprehend. And sometimes those currents carry haunting whispers from the future. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the terrifying mysteries of history, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more journeys into the unknown. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an episode. What historical mystery or chilling event should we explore next? Let us know in the comments below. Until next time, keep questioning the past, and always keep a watchful eye on the future, because you never truly know what is waiting in the dark. History is not a straight line. It is a puzzle waiting to be solved. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.